صل على محمد وآل Muhammad. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. One of the beautiful teachings of the religion of Islam and one of the obligations that we have to observe is to pay Zakat al-Fitra. Basically, it's a meal that all Muslims donate on the day of Eid. We have over 1.6 or 1.7 billion Muslims around the world. Imagine if each Muslim pays Zakat al-Fitra. That's over 1 billion meals offered to the poor, to the billions of people who suffer from poverty. That is a beautiful way to celebrate Eid and the end of Ramadan by upholding the spirit of charity and giving to others. Let's examine Zakat al-Fitra from a Islamic legal perspective, from a fiqh perspective. Zakat al-Fitra is mandatory on anyone who's financially capable of paying it. Someone who's not considered a faqir, a poor person. If you're a poor person, you struggle with your expenses throughout the year, you do not have to pay Zakat al-Fitra. It's mandatory on those who have the ability and they are not considered poor people. So this is the first aspect of Zakat al-Fitra. Who has to pay Zakat al-Fitra? Meaning, who is the one responsible to actually make the payment? The one who has to pay Zakat al-Fitra is the one who's sponsoring others like his family members and the one who has dependents. So let's say the husband is the one who works and he is financially responsible for his wife, for his children, for other people living in his house. They are technically depending on him. He has to pay the zakat on them. They don't have to pay it. It's the breadwinner of the family who has to pay it. The one who's sponsoring you and when it comes to your expenses. That person has to pay Zakat al-Fitra. This includes children. If you have young children at home, even an infant, Zakat al-Fitra applies. You have to pay Zakat al-Fitra on behalf of your family members and those whom you are financially responsible for. What about a pregnant woman who has a baby on the way? Does Zakat al-Fitra become mandatory to pay on that fetus? No. If the fetus was not born before the night of Eid, so the eve of the Eid, if the fetus was born before that, then yes, you have to count that baby when you're doing your calculation for Zakat al-Fitra. But if the baby was born after the night of Eid, let's say the morning of the Eid, in that case Zakat al-Fitra is not mandatory. What about those who sponsor orphans? Do they have to pay Zakat al-Fitra for them? If you are fully sponsoring that orphan, you're taking care of all their life expenses or the majority of their life expenses, then yes, you are responsible to pay the fitra for them. But if you're just helping out an orphan, they're already sponsored, they're living with someone, someone's taking care of that orphan, but you're helping the orphan. You're giving $30 a month, $50 a month to help out the orphan. But you're not considered to be the one who's sponsoring the expenses of this orphan. In that case, you do not have to pay Zakat al-Fitra on behalf of the orphan. How about if someone on the night of Eid is your guest? Because we do have hadiths that state on the night of Eid, if you have dependents whom you're responsible for, you have to pay the zakat on them. So if you have some guests over, it's your last iftar the night of Eid, you have 20 guests at your house. Do you have to pay for their fitrah? In order for you to have to pay for their fitrah, you have to be considered in your society to be sponsoring them, taking care of their expenses. So if they're just coming for an hour or 2, 3 hours and having a meal, they're just accepting your invitation, they are not really your dependents here. So you don't have to pay the zakat for them. But let's say you have a guest who's staying with you for a long time. 2 weeks, 2 months, that guest is in your house. And when that guest is in your house, you're the one who's taking care of his expenses, right? The bills, the food, the lunch, the breakfast, the dinner, that's all on you. In that case, you would have to pay the fitrah. Now, when we say you have to pay the fitrah, it doesn't mean the other person is not allowed to pay it. If your guest, your son, your daughter says, I would like to pay my own fitrah, they can, no problem. But the obligation is on you, meaning if they did not, you have to be the one to pay it. When does it become mandatory to pay zakat al-fitrah? It becomes mandatory for you to take out the money and start the process of giving it to the poor on the night of Eid. So the last day of Ramadan, at Maghrib time, that's when you take out zakat al-fitrah. And you have time until the next day, until noon time. The Shar'i noon, which is the time of Salatul Dhuhr, you have time until then. And if you're going for the Eid prayers, you have time until the Eid prayer. So make sure that you have paid your zakat al-fitrah before the Eid prayer, not after. Before noon, if you're not going to Salatul Eid, not after. Deliberately delaying it until after that is sinful. Can you give the zakat al-fitrah before the day of Eid? What if you know a poor person and it's the 15th of Ramadan, or it's Laylatul Qadr, you want to give it to someone? Yes, many scholars have mentioned that you can give it before the day of Eid, even though it's better to wait until the day of Eid. Who is the recipient of zakat al-fitrah? Who do you give it to? A poor believer, someone who's poor, and they are a person of faith, they are believers. And many scholars have stated they have to be in your city. So if you know poor families in your city, give it to them. If you don't, then you can send it somewhere else that needs the zakat, these meals. What is the value of zakat al-fitrah? Zakat al-fitrah has to be an average meal in your community. How much does an average meal cost in your community? It has to be at least 3 kilograms of food. So let's say rice or any other type of common food in the society that you live in. Now, food prices vary from one region to another region. In some places it can be $10, $11, some places $15. As a precaution, my dear brothers and sisters, I recommend you pay $15. It could be a few dollars less depending on where you live. It could be maybe $11, $12. But as a precaution, especially recently with COVID-19, some food prices have actually gone up. So to be on the cautious side, I recommend that you calculate your fitrah to be $15 this year. So if you're a family of 3, you pay $45. If you're a family of 4, you pay $60. If you're a family of 10, you will pay $150, and so on and so forth. So this is the value of zakat al-fitrah. This is an Islamic obligation, my dear brothers and sisters. We have to honor it. Another condition here for zakat al-fitrah is that if you are not a Sayyid, a Hashimi, meaning your family tree does not go back to the family of the Prophet ﷺ, to the Bani Hashim. If you're not a Hashimi, you cannot give your fitrah to someone who is a Hashimi, to someone who is a Sayyid. So non-Sayyids, their fitrah has to go to non-Sayyids. They cannot give their fitrah to a Sayyid. Keep that in mind, my dear brothers and sisters. So when you deposit the envelope, write on it. Make sure that this is clear. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all. I congratulate you all on the Eid. I know this year it has been a unique and challenging month of Ramadan, as many of us around the world have been under lockdowns. I know this year during the Eid we do not have the blessing of meeting one another, visiting one another, coming to the mosque to pray Salat al-Eid together. But we are thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we ask Allah to strengthen us in the face of this trial, and we ask Allah to lift this affliction. So I wish a happy Eid for you all. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.